Good morning, everyone, from wherever you are. Welcome to Beyond Borders, Advancing Gender Equality in the Digital Age, a UN CSW parallel event presented by the International Action Network for Gender Equity and Law, known by its handy acronym, IANGEL. IANGEL is an international network of lawyers dedicated to harnessing the power of pro bono legal services and connecting it to the cause of gender equality locally, nationally, and globally. My name is Nancy Newman, and I'm the founder and president of IANGEL, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our important discussion on the role that technology can play in advancing equality, education, and empowerment for women and girls. I am also excited to be part of this multinational panel to share perspectives on this topic. Before we get started, I have a couple of important announcements. First, I'm pleased to announce that this particular day, March 15th, 2023, is IANGEL's 10th anniversary. For real. We were formed exactly 10 years ago on March 15th, 2013, and we have been promoting gender equality through education, advocacy, and the engagement of pro bono legal resources ever since. We are so grateful for our network of international advocates and volunteers and supporters that have allowed us to make it to this day. Second, as part of our 10th anniversary celebration, this year we will present our Amel Zanoun Zouani Rights and Leadership Award to an accomplished feminist leader who has achieved excellence in her field and made an outstanding contribution to the promotion of women's human rights. Our award will be presented at our 10th anniversary gala celebration in San Francisco later this year. So if you know an accomplished feminist leader, please submit a nomination packet for her by April 15th, 2013. Joelle is dropping a link into the chat, and you can always get more information from our website, www.iangel.org. We would really appreciate your alerting your networks to this opportunity to recognize an inspiring feminist leader. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed moderator for this morning's discussion, Natalia Orzola. Natalia is a Colombian environmental and human rights lawyer and a board member of IANGEL. She also acts as co-chief operating officer of the Global Network for Human Rights and the Environment. Natalia, take it away.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you everyone for joining us today to hear from our amazing panelists, which I will now briefly introduce before we start our discussion. So today we have Mawish Moazzam, who is a lawyer and a feminist scholar from Pakistan. She earned her LLM degree at UC Berkeley School of Law with a specialization in international law, and also served as an associate editor for the Berkeley Journal of Middle Eastern and Islamic Law. She is currently a doctoral candidate at UC Berkeley, focusing on feminist legal theory, especially the development of dominance theory from a comparative perspective. Nancy Newman is a partner at Hanson Bridget LLP in San Francisco, specializing in real estate litigation and a lifelong activist for equality and justice. She is the past president of Queen's Bench Bar Association and of the National Conference of Women's Bar Associations. In 2013, she founded IANGEL and currently leads IANGEL as its president and executive officer. Stella Odife is a Nigerian barrister and a dedicated activist for women's rights. Stella has authored 2 books on gender equity issues in Nigeria and co-founded the Women's Organization for Gender Issues, a United Nations NGO in Lagos. This organization teaches women in rural Nigeria how to start their own businesses and gain economic independence, educates women about their legal rights, provides free legal services, and brings lawsuits to challenge discriminatory practices. Stella previously served on IANGEL's board of directors and is now a member of its advisory board. So without further ado, I will now start our discussion. And the first question that I would like to pose all of you is, what are some key challenges related to women's and girls' empowerment in your country or region that you would like to highlight today? Mawish, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I can start. I'm from Pakistan, and women constitute 49% of the total population. Pakistan is an agricultural country, and 68% of the population lives in rural areas. I'm especially mentioning these statistics because the status of women in Pakistan varies considerably across classes and urban and rural divide. So I want to focus on the status of women, like the women who lives in rural areas, because they are in majority and they are facing extreme discrimination and exploitation. They are facing lack of medical and health facilities, lack of access to education, early and forced marriages. They don't have ownership rights in land. But there are multiple factors behind this exploitation and oppression. But right now, I would highlight two major challenges for their empowerment. The first one is patriarchal mindset. Pakistan has a male dominant structure, and the male members of the society don't encourage or facilitate women to get access to education. Second major challenge is poverty. They don't have financial resources. These women and girls in rural areas, they don't have financial resources to get access to education. And some institutions are like really far away and they don't get transport to travel to educational institute. So for me, and not for me, like this is the fact that nothing is more empowering than the education. So when the girls and women don't get access to education, they don't know their rights, they don't realize their potential. So consequently, they remain powerless and exploited. So with this specific like focus for Pakistan, so I think the two major key challenges for women empowerment are like first one is patriarchal mindset, and the second one is poverty, the lack of financial resources. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mawish. Stella, maybe you can continue.
Yeah. Like Mawa just said, we have the same problem in patriarchal culture that see the men as superior to women. We also have the problem of lack of finance. But I must mention here, ours is becoming more critical now. With the last election we had on the 25th of February, the record shows now that before the election, we had about 22 women in the Federal House and 9 women or 7 women in the Senate. But after this last election, we only have 5 women in the Senate. And now we have only 15 women in the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives will have 360 people, and you only have 15 women. Then in the Senate, 109, and we only have 5 of them. So you can see that we have marched backwards, almost 20 to 50 years backwards from where we started. So the laws that we are looking forward to, that will help us get these challenges women are having to be passed, is going to be completely difficult to get through. And then, apart from that, the Child Rights Act we passed. Up till now, some states have not domesticated it. And apart from not domesticating it, that means their girls are not still going to school like the boys. At the higher level, we have women being given job as tokenism. It's not because they are qualified. And you see them, they are highly qualified women, even more qualified than the men. But in most cases, we see them not getting the job. And when they do give them, they give it to them as if it's, oh, I'm being nice to you. It's not being nice. So we are clearly qualified to have the job. Tokenism is one of the greatest problems we have. When the men realize, if they realize that as long as we are qualified as they are, which we are lucky, we have a lot of qualified women who can take any position now. Once they understand we have equal right in terms of what to get, as long as we're educated, is going to help us. And again, resource allocation. Our Ministry of Women Affairs is still the least that during the federal budget, gets the least allocation from the federal government, followed by Ministry of Science and Technology. That will tell you what is going on in our system. Just a brief comment.
My turn next?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So key challenges for women in the United States, to my mind, the Dobbs decision last year is really the greatest threat to equality and empowerment for women and girls in the United States, certainly in my lifetime. It impacts all of us in a variety of ways. Before Dobbs, the right to make the private decision of whether to carry a pregnancy to term had federal constitutional protection since 1973 under the decision of Roe v. Wade from the Supreme Court. So for nearly 50 years, that right was woven into the fabric of American society. But a new Supreme Court, dominated by far-right extremists appointed by Donald Trump, overruled Roe v. Wade last year with this odious Dobbs decision. It's really the first time in the history of the United States that the Supreme Court has taken away a constitutionally protected right. And many of us, I think, didn't quite reckon with the prospect that we could be forced back to a bygone age when women had no control over their own bodies. Stella mentioned going back 50 years. This is exactly the feeling we had. It's a shock to the sensibilities, and also a shock to the global women's rights community that looks to the United States for leadership on rights issues and not about taking them away. I think Dobbs is also a critical setback for the rule of law because it has really damaged respect for the institution of the United States Supreme Court as part of our democracy. The decision represents results-oriented analysis in its crudest form. The decision ignores legal precedent. It says that constitutional protection only extends to rights that are rooted in history and tradition from a time when women couldn't vote and people of color were slaves. It ignores the Ninth Amendment, which directs that constitutional rights be interpreted broadly. And most egregiously, it pretty much ignores the interests of women in making this decision. It's in this way, it really tears at the fabric of our society. And the practical impact of this decision has been devastating and continues to wreak havoc in our society. It immediately turned the issue of abortion rights back to the states. And that caused trigger laws that were passed by Republican legislatures to spring into effect if Roe was overturned. So there's now a patchwork quilt of laws and restrictions around the country where millions of women are denied access to abortion health care. And it also puts doctors in this completely untenable position of being in states where there may be an exception for an abortion to save the life of a mother. If a woman miscarries, the doctor has to wait, and the woman has to wait and get sicker and sicker and sicker from sepsis until she's on the verge of death before the doctor can administer life-saving health care. It's crazy. I think it's also created unique challenges in the digital age. Texas has a law that allows third parties to bring civil lawsuits against people who aid or abet an abortion for somebody in Texas. And just last week, it was reported that a man sued some women that he alleged assisted his ex-wife in procuring safe and legal medication to end an unwanted pregnancy, and citing as evidence text messages and emails between these women. And as I think we know, women help women, and this kind of attack on the kinds of networks that women provide to support each other through these issues is just, it's appalling and egregious. And yet, I would say, even in darkness, there are sources of light. The Dobbs decision is so deeply unpopular in the United States and affects so many in such a direct and personal way. It really has unleashed a very powerful force of activism. We see new legal networks have sprung up in response to the decision. I noted that just immediately after the decision, the Dobbs decision came down, the Bar Association of San Francisco launched the Legal Alliance for Reproductive Rights, a group of over 70 law firms providing pro bono legal assistance for individuals, health providers, and organizations impacted by legislation that subjects people to civil litigation for seeking or facilitating access to reproductive health care. There are also hotlines operated by If, When, How. There are resources available for people to get information and money if they need it, and legal advice, legal assistance to deal with this problem. But it is an ongoing challenge that we have to deal with because I don't think you can just, with a cynical stroke of the Supreme Court's pen, you can't yank a society back 50 years. You just can't. And we're not going to put up with it, and we're going to fight back. So that is a challenge we face, but we'll face it.
Thank you so much, Nancy. So our final panelist today is Kausar Amini. I'm going to briefly introduce her and then let her give her the floor to speak about this first question. So Kausar is the founder and CEO of Women's Solidarity for Peace and Leadership and the Amini Soccer Academy. She is a former athlete with the Afghanistan women's national soccer team, as well as a women's rights activist, author, speaker, and changemaker, and uses her experience and expertise to shed light on the plight of women in Afghanistan. So Kausar, we were just talking about different challenges that each of the panelists wanted to highlight today in relation to CSW 67 main theme, but also what they consider is important to talk about in this forum regarding their home countries or regions. So is there anything you would like to highlight today for us?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sure, thank you so much, Natalie, for your nice introduction. Good morning, I'm Kausar Amini. As you mentioned, I'm a former athlete, women rights activist. And the most important thing, so I'm a recent immigrant to the United States of America from Afghanistan. I left my country in early 2019 to seek safety for my family and for myself because of the personal threat and political pressure for me. And the moment I have only two options, escape or stay. I know it was very hard for me to take this decision to escape my country, but it was one of the best decisions I made ever for my life, for my safety. Luckily, I just started my pathway and my journey in US with too many challenges and obstacles and lack of support. But luckily, I found myself later on 2020 by making a great connection and network here in US. For sure, if we want to discuss about if I want to discuss about my home country, Afghanistan, there's too many things happening right now. Based on the news, I'm sure everybody listening and hearing, I'm so disappointed and my heart's break that world is still deaf and blind. They're not seeing women's pain. They're not hearing women's voices. A country with 45 years of war, a country with 25 years of achievements, 30 years of achievements since the United States of America and international organization involvement. Now today we're seeing a darkness on the whole country. Females are like not allowed to go to school. Females are like not allowed to go to job. People are like surviving from hunger. Immigration is like increasing every day. A big issue. Democracy is under question and human right is under attack. So what makes sense for me as a young leader from Afghanistan is we need to stand up together. So there's too many things happening in the ground, and I do have daily reports and from the people, especially from women from the ground, and empowering women. I'm sure SDGA have 17 Sustainable Development Goal. Most of them could apply for some of these undeveloped countries like Afghanistan, and I'm sure they're doing their best. But since country is in a dark and in a situation where no human's life could live, so I'm sure the SDG Sustainable Development Goals could not be approached with these lack of security and inequality in those countries that females are like suffering. So thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you, and thank you all for sharing these important challenges for us to keep in mind. And one thing that I heard from each of you was like the importance of networking and global networks and the work of NGOs in advancing gender equality and women's empowerment worldwide. So I would like to ask you, and considering this year's CSW 67's main theme, how do you think technology has helped you or your organization in advancing gender equality? So maybe Nancy, you could take this one.
Thank you, Natalia. In preparing for this event, I was excited to reflect on the role that technology has played in IANGEL's mission to advance equality, since it's absolutely true that IANGEL would not exist without it. As a global network working on international women's rights, IANGEL depends on modern technology, email, shared workspace, Zoom meetings, WhatsApp, Google Translate, and the whole panoply of technological tools to educate, advocate, and engage volunteer resources on gender equality issues and projects. And I think these tools are often taken for granted in the modern age, but they're absolutely vital to enable the networking that powers the struggle forward. To my mind, it boils down to contact, content, connection, and continuity. Contact being the first essential ingredient to building a force to advance equality across borders. Back in the early 2000s, when I was president of the National Conference of Women's Bar Associations, I had the privilege of meeting an amazing feminist lawyer and trailblazer from Nigeria named Stella Odife. And she's on our panel today. So it's been, 20 years. But it was so exciting and inspiring to get to know Stella. And though we lived 9,000 miles apart and grew up in completely different environments, I felt that we were kindred spirits. And the more feminist lawyers and activists I met from different countries and different continents, the more it reinforced for me that we who work in this space have far more in common than we have differences. And technology allowed us to have this contact with each other on which our whole network is built. Content is the next key ingredient that technology provides through websites, research papers, blogs, and of course, email communications between activists. We can share important analytical content and strategic insights within our communities. I noted that at the end of 2022, the Child Marriage Research to Action Network, which goes by its acronym CRANK, I love that, brought together researchers, advocates, and funders in the fight to abolish child marriage, and brought them all together to share collected insights and research. And they created an online research tracker so that advocates can share their research and their insights with each other. This powers the struggle forward. In a similar vein, IANGEL has a project called the Girls' Rights Project, involving research from many different countries and different continents, led by Natalia Orzola, on issues of health and reproductive rights, female genital mutilation, and child marriage, to develop an intersectional framework for advocacy around these issues. And we are really looking forward to sharing the results of that research with our network and building a strong content base to advance equality on those issues. And the last 2 points are fairly obvious. Connection and continuity are important features of effective advocacy in the digital age. The persistent injustice of systemic discrimination against women and girls is a distressing reality in this world. And we are seeing a backlash against women's rights, people of color, the LGBTQI community. We see attacks on democracy itself and the outrageous Dobbs decision. And sometimes it can feel like it's more than we can take. Sometimes I just want to crawl under my desk. But we can't do that. We can't do that. And our connection to each other helps us get through the tough times. And the connections that we build that are facilitated by global technology are really essential for keeping our hearts in the game. And keeping our hearts in the game is the key to our success. As long as we stay with it, we will not fail. I am confident. It may take a long time, but the only way we fail is if we give up. So the continuity of sisterhood that is provided by our networks, facilitated by technology, and advanced through programs like this one, is just, it's absolutely essential, not only to advancing equality, but to my mind, saving the world.
Very well said, Nancy. Stella, is there something you'd like to add on this regard?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like Nancy said, it makes communication very easy. But before I go on to highlight the importance of technology, let me also tell you that the idea of technology came into my country with a man's face. Man's face. So most people, as far as we were concerned, men got into technology more than women. It had that face as if it was a masculine issue. So most women did not really get into technology early enough. But the good news is that right now it's almost coming to break-even point in terms of the educational system at a higher level. So what I'm trying to emphasize is this. At the university level, computer science was mainly seen as a male, it was a male-dominated career, just like we have other sciences, the STEM issue, engineering, technology, blah, blah. It was just like that until people realized that the language of the world today is technology. So it's not meant for any species. It is for both male and female, everybody in the world, because we all have to communicate. If you have to communicate with us, you're not just going to come to Nigeria to communicate with only the men. Women are up to almost 50%. You have to communicate with all of us. So it now wore a better face. So we're having more people now going into technology. But at the lowest level, that's where we had the problem. At the secondary school level, there is no iota of technology until not more than, I'll say, 10 years ago. Most of them had not finished school without knowing what computer was. They will not see it, not talk of using it. But it is also changing. It has changed a lot because a lot of our young girls now are into technology. When they graduate from their high school, they're now going to the university and they have that basic knowledge to do their term paper on their computer. But lack of finance, again, makes it difficult for them to own private iPad or computer. So you see them again constrained into going to what we call business centers to do their term papers, which is like a setback. You do your term work with longhand, then you carry it to a center where it will be typed. So, and then for a long time too, telephone was a privileged thing. Ordinary telephone, the lowest of the technology we got. And only very few people could have it. The men started with it, but today, everybody will now have it. And that has given a lot of relief to NGOs like mine. I can now stay in Abuja and get my man in Enugu or Anambra State or Lagos to tell him, I saw this in my WhatsApp chat or group chat. Is it true? Could you go and verify what is happening? Like, there is a case of a young girl who was 12 years when she gave birth to a child in a hospital, abandoned by the man who pregnanted her. And she's from a very poor home. So no one to pay the bill. So I sent my man to go there. Then while we were doing that, FIDA also saw it and came in. Then the police was alerted. The commissioner for women affairs of the state came in, and this girl was rescued. The man was arrested, a 70-year-old man. He was arrested, he's in police net. Whatever they're doing with him, we don't want to know anymore, but I know he's being prosecuted. But the girl was saved. There are so many things happening in that light right now. So we don't have to, like before, unless you go physically, you won't be able. I would have found it difficult to tell the man what to do immediately. So technology is helping us do our work properly. And we all know that apart from a dissemination of information, we now do our meetings, most of, like we're doing now, Zoom. It's only once in a while we now call formal meeting for all members to stay together. And like IANGEL, now Stella can now, like the time I had a major problem I couldn't handle on my own, the doctor that was being shortchanged in her position, we went to the National Assembly. If I had this Zoom like this, Nancy would have seen me addressing the House as we were presenting our case. So
I'm really sorry I missed that.
Yes, so you can see the extent technology can go. So right now we can easily be in touch with each other, and that creates a lot of credibility and reliability on partners. You can't overlook that. And one thing, Nancy, I want to appeal to the United Nations, let them make it compulsory that our school system must have technology, what do we call it, the basis in our high school. Let it be included in our curriculum so that even after that's high school, after secondary school, even if the child does not have any other education, she has that basic knowledge of being able to use her phone to record what is happening. And not all phones can record. So they need to upgrade their phone. They need to be empowered more economically, again, financially, so that they'll be able to acquire better phones that can take pictures and record events. That is going to help us a lot in our fight over there. I think maybe as time goes on, I'll have more things to put in this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Hearing and learning how technology can be used as a tool for empowering women and girls worldwide, to also like how technology help us go through the toll that activism bears up on our mental health. It's also very important. And I think it's very good that we are here talking about these things and voicing these type of things that could have been considered taboo or not something to talk about in previous years and ages. However, one thing that I also wanted to raise is how the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, also showed us that some of the challenges that technology is trying to overcome are also still unmet in a lot of countries and different places of the world, and how access to technology continues to be unequal at the very best and can even negatively impact women and girls' access to education. So as we all know, COVID-19 forced schools and universities to shift to remote learning. I would like to ask Kauser, what impact did this additional reliance on technology had on education and empowerment of women and girls? Like, do you think it exacerbated inequalities? Did it help reduce it? How did you experience, or do you know about this happening?
Thank you, Natalie. So for sure, COVID-19 had many side effects. So if you want to circle back to the education and hybrid system of the education and learning, so it also had some negative and positive impact. So for the most developed countries like US, Canada, or Europe country, it had the most positive outcome as based on my research, because it just support the women to get to their education anytime, anywhere. Secondly, there's more choices for especially for female dominant to get selected their major. And also because of the COVID-19, with the economy issue with the world right now, that everybody's surviving and facing that. So people has been displaced from one country to another, moving from one city to another city. So with the hybrid learning, distance learning, and the COVID-19 taught us that we could still continue our job, we could still continue our education. So, but the negative side effect with the COVID-19 specifically, in those countries with no opportunity, even for example, a great example could be Afghanistan. So schools was like shut off, and people, women, girls, even teenage, had no access to the internet. Most of them, I'm not saying like all of them, most of them, some of them that had access to internet and online learning, they had issue with the knowledge of using the computer. even they have the knowledge of using the computer, they had no computer. So it's too many things. It's just sometimes my friends like saying like, oh my God, how it's competing this all issues together. But I'm saying like, see, look, this is everything is tied up to each other. But overall, based on the recent update in 2023, it shows like more than 85% of people by their survey and latest in 2020 to 22, it shows like COVID-19 had a negatively impact on the education and workforce environment. So for example, a lot of the offices has been shut off because everybody is asking for the remote employee. And for the remote employee, families, especially women's on the side, always has been victims. So they're facing crisis with the family and they're having issue with the childcare. So this is another issue. So if we could want to compare this all both sides in an average and say like which is if this COVID-19 has a great impact or not, I guess we are still very early to decide this. But as we all individual being as a infected person to this direct or imposed to this direct virus by not only by getting COVID-19, but just being infected by their COVID-19's side effect in our workspace and our daily family life, it could get changed. But the most important thing is still world is experiencing economy issues. So with the COVID-19 specifically, with the education phase, a lot of universities or colleges has been decrease their financial aid to the student because they just said like you're studying hybrid, so this tuition fee or this is not going to be reimbursed, or there's no commute and whatever. So these are all the updates and outcome that based on my experience being in around in a space with these folks, especially with these women are like experiencing. But for sure, COVID-19 taught us a lot of things, but COVID-19 made us more be connected and used to the technology, which is really important thing that I really learned. I'm sitting here in the United States of America. I could easily communicate to friends to any part of the Europe very easily, because this is kind of lifestyle for people right now. And I don't need to travel to that Europe. I don't need to go physically there, but it was also possible before, but people were often used to this lifestyle, but I'm sure. So we need to get back, reheal from COVID-19 as soon as possible, because we're like suffering from economy issues and poverty is increasing every day. And even in some country, the researcher mentioned like it could be a reason for a war too. So in some unsecure countries. So it's too many facts. So I just want to highlight some of the facts that I recently mentioned. I just want to pass it over to my great friend to just explain a little bit more based on her experience. I just want to stop up here. I know if I start talking, I will talk for a whole 10 to 15 minutes. I don't want to just take everybody's time. Just be respectful of everyone's. Thank you.
Thank you, Kausar. Mawish, would you like to add anything?
I am strongly agreed with Kausar when we are discussing the positive role of the technology during COVID, especially on education and university learning. So, but I have a different, like some different perspective as well, not in different country, like within the Pakistan. As I have already mentioned, that there is a huge gap between the status of women in cities, like in urban areas in Pakistan, and the status of women in rural areas in Pakistan. So in big cities, yes, technology, and during the COVID-19, universities and schools shifted to technology, online learning. So women continued getting that education and empowerment and facilities. But the problem with this technology is that this remote learning is highly dependent on the logistics. So in rural areas, women are suffering from like lack of financial stability, financial resources. they don't have access to laptops. They cannot afford the devices. They cannot afford to buy laptops. They cannot afford to buy computer, tablets, or even smartphones. If somehow they get these devices, they don't have required skill and training to use these devices for their empowerment and for their education. And if they try to learn these skills and they try to get the training, they don't have established networking, they don't have established internet connections, and they don't have even stable electricity supplies, because in Pakistan, especially in remote areas, there are frequent scheduled and unscheduled power off. So they cannot be a part of live learning sessions. They can get recordings, but they cannot be a part of live learning and live classes and live educational setup. So it has yes, it has positive impact, but it has impacted during COVID. The shift from in-person learning and in-person education to remote learning has impacted some classes and some group of women positively. And for some group, and like they are majority in Pakistan, they couldn't, it wasn't really helpful for them to get education and empowerment. So yeah, it has, like, I agree with Kausar, it has like positive and negative impact, and within the same country and to different groups. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you were both talking about shows how pre-existing inequalities are exacerbated in the times of crisis, such as like the pandemic crisis, or even in the climate crisis. And as we are still building back better, as we are still in that process of recovering, the full impacts of these effects of COVID-19 pandemic and remote learning and unequal access to education are still to be seen. So there's still a lot that we might be facing in the coming years, and how the gender gap in both access to education and access to high-paying jobs, steady jobs, has either like further or not, which likely has. But additionally to these challenges related to the pandemic, we also live in times with political challenges that affect gender equality and empowerment. So I would like to ask Mawish first, if you could give me an example of the role technology can play in supporting girls' education despite these political challenges.
Yeah, despite the political and social challenges, if women have access to technology, so that the problem is this: if they have access to technology, so obviously technology can play a very positive and very important role in women empowerment, because through the technology, they, like, especially the social media, like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Twitter, they can make connection. They can connect to international networking. They can connect to international organization for women empowerment. Women can be part of support groups. And plus, yeah, they can connect, they can get education, they can get information, they can be hired, they can be they can get employment. So yes, if they have access to if they have access to the technology, so they can use technology for their empowerment. Say they can be connected, and they can be very resourceful for their community.
Great, thank you. Nancy, would you like to add something?
Sure. Well, as Kausar mentioned, the crisis for women and girls in Afghanistan since the Taliban returned to power cannot be overstated. According to the German Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, Afghanistan is experiencing the biggest violation on earth of women's rights under Taliban rule. So earlier promises that Taliban 2.0 would be more moderate have really fallen by the wayside and proved to be untrue. And the regime issues ever more restrictive edicts against women and violating the basic human rights of pretty much the entire female population in that country. Women are banned from public spaces, from public parks, from playing sports, from NGO work, from government jobs. And, you know, the especially cruel blow to the hopes and dreams of millions, they've banned education for girls and women above the 6th grade. And I think it's really important to consider the impact of that kind of a ban. Suddenly, the education of millions of girls and women is just stopped in its tracks. How are these people supposed to spend their time when what they want more than anything is to learn and grow and try to build a future for themselves? So this repressive political environment has created just a massive, intense need for education and a determination by women in Afghanistan to provide that education really no matter what, despite the bans, despite its being illegal, and despite the political challenges. So through a story that was carried by the AP on the international press last year, IANGEL learned about these women operating underground schools in Afghanistan and used technology through emails and WhatsApp to connect with these young teachers in Kabul in order to support their efforts. The first step was establishing direct communication with them. That happened through texts and Google Translate, and to let them know that they're not alone, to provide support for their efforts. I'd say that support is both emotional and financial. It's really key in this kind of environment to ward off despair. These women are facing a crisis that is just really hard to imagine. Technology, they do have phones. Thank goodness they have phones. Thank goodness they have internet. And the technology has allowed them to contact me when they need to speak. We have enjoyed a true miracle of direct phone calls from Kabul to San Francisco. I mean, every so often when they just need to speak, and sometimes the language doesn't come through, but we can communicate. Their English is pretty good, and they're also using their phones to teach online classes. They have hundreds of girls that are not allowed to leave their homes, and they have online classes. They teach them. They give them lessons, and they gather in these remote buildings. It's amazing, and they send IANGEL pictures and videos of these classes and this work that they're doing to help us with international advocacy, to facilitate a mobilization against the Taliban regime. So last week, I asked one of these young teachers what she would like to say to all of you joining us for this event. I said, we have this UN CSW, and I will convey your message. What is it you would like to say? So she worked with her sister on something she wanted to say and used Google Translate, and I'm going to read you what her message is. So she says, more than 1.5 years of Taliban rule in Afghanistan, and new atrocities against women are reported every day. For over 1.5 years, women have been deprived of their fundamental rights to education, work, freedom, and other human rights. Women are deprived of all political, economic, cultural, and social rights. There is torture, repression, killing, forced marriages, and rape by the Taliban. Today, Afghan women are the only women in the world facing this kind of oppression, and everyone is just watching. Silence and fear have spread everywhere in Afghanistan. And when women who want to destroy this silence raise their voices to plead, they are subjected to violence, imprisonment, rape, and murder. As an activist for women's rights, I ask the people of the world to take a moment, close your eyes, and imagine yourself in the position of the Afghan woman, a woman who has been deprived of all aspects of life, a woman who grew up in the patriarchal culture of Afghanistan, but with education and work has struggled and changed a society, a woman who has achieved many things in the last 20 years. And now she is deprived of all of her basic rights to live her life and even to go outside of the house. In this situation, what will you do? For now, we have to fight. We are ready to endure these threats, and we fight secretly for the human rights of women and children. And she concludes with, do not forget us. And we will not. So to join this effort, I invite all the international lawyers and the global women's rights leaders that are in this, joining us today to join the movement at End Gender Apartheid Today. I think Joelle dropped it in the chat. It's www.endgenderapartheid.today. I hope you'll join us. I think we cannot turn away from this crisis. The whole world needs to stand up and take concrete action to isolate this regime and deprive it of sustenance for this egregious human rights violation. So may technology enable all of that.
Thank you, Nancy. And these are just a few examples of how women at the forefront can make changes. And it actually resonates in some level with the current situation in my home country, Colombia, which, in case you don't know, we recently signed a peace agreement with the largest guerrilla group after over 50 years of internal armed conflict. And as we build peace, technology has been considered both like since the inception of the peace agreement and its commitment as a necessary tool to advance equality, both in terms of gender and also other historically marginalized groups in Colombia. And I think it is important to consider that all of this is being made possible by the efforts of different groups, but also of women, and women acting in the forefront of these significant and important challenges that will definitely have an impact in our society as we move forward. And bridging the education gap, it's one of these instrumental challenges that we are facing, and empowering women and girls could prove to be important, especially people that are living in rural context. So I would like to ask Stella first, how have you or your organization helped closing this gap in your country?
First of all, Nancy, you raised something that pertains to the rights of the girls in Afghanistan. I also want to put up this point. Nigeria had election on the 25th of last month, and we now have a Muslim ticket, which has never, it only happened once, but they didn't succeed in taking the seat. This time around, we have a Muslim ticket. That means the president and the vice. We always balance it with the president, Christian or Muslim, to mellow the tempo. Now we have this. I hope the world should be looking out for not something like Afghanistan to be in Nigeria. I'm just signing a note of warning. Now, in terms of education, it's not, when it comes to education in a country, an NGO alone cannot do it. But in my own little way, and my organization, joining with people like FIDA is Federation of International Women Lawyers, and other NGOs, they've been able to establish what we call the Child Rights Act. That is an act that allows for the development of the girl child with the male child. So there's no preference. It's not a law that a female child is as qualified and is allowed to go to school like the male child. A lot of the states in my country have domesticated it and are doing very well. And but some are still lagging behind. They've refused to domesticate the law, talk less of implementing it. And if we're talking about educational advancement of women in this technological age, we must look down to the lowest level. In some areas, we don't have good bathrooms, facilities for young girls when they go to school. You see them skipping classes, even those who now have opportunity of going to school, skipping classes during their menstrual period because there is no water, no borehole within the school environment, and there is no good bathroom. So they stay home. And if you calculate it in every month, 1 week every month, the girl child is out of school while the other ones are there. We need to, I don't know, we see UN every year, they call us for meeting, the same thing over and over. We see them as a toothless bulldog. If you put a law, let's talk SDGs, these Sustainable Development Goals, 4 and 5, talks about empowerment of women. What have you done to ensure that the law you put in place is being implemented in all the countries of the world? We don't see any force at all. We talk about the education of the girl child is the paramount thing for us to get the equality we need. What are we actually doing apart from the three A's we do in Nigeria? Awareness creation at the lowest level. I don't need to be told that education is important, but the rural woman and the girl child in the rural setting, they need to know that education is very paramount for them to catch up with what is happening in the world. Now, the advocacy we do, our House members, they don't understand that they are sent to the House to legislate for the welfare of the people. They still do not understand it. Then the final one is allocation of resources. How do we get governments to allocate reasonable resources to the educational sector and ensure that these things are implemented? So unless we look into those areas, we're not going to have what we are looking for. And every year we keep coming back to the same thing. Yes, Horst Reichel said, gender equality fight is a wicked fight. Wicked not in the real pervasive sense of wickedness, no, because it's so difficult, it's hydra-headed. We have to find a way of taming it. And the only way we can tame them is doing the little we can do. Any area we can cut, we cut off and we continue our program. So in terms of WOGI, it's through advocacy, awareness creation, and of course, also encouraging our House members whom we can reach to make sure that they influence policies that will help the educational sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Kausar, would you like to add something?
Sure, 100%, Natalia. So I'm totally agree with the Stella Sammedas that she mentioned. By supporting breaking this huge bridge of distance between education and the humanity, I guess we need to give awareness to some basic basic community level and also some rural area. A great example, she remind me of my voluntary help couple of years before with some international organization. I was trying to promote supporting a specific campaign which was designed to give awareness to women how they could access their fundamental rights. So I was going to every village, every city, every part of the country, which was even not secure for women to go. I was going there and I was knocking to every single door, and I was asking those women, so what is your right and how you need to get access to the healthcare, to the child support, to mental health, to family planning, to support the kids to grow. And by getting more involved in these types of projects, one time I just realized that it's not going to help, because even we are trying to promote gender equality, support women's in workplaces, even in sport places, in political space and economy, if we are not educating every single man to support their women, this is a big issue. If every single, for example, I'm Kausar Amini, I know my all right. I grew up in a country with too many obstacle challenges, gender issues, violence, and anything you can imagine of. But if my husband, my brother, and my father didn't support me, for sure, I'm not gonna be here today that I'm standing in this stage. So let's not only giving awareness to women is not a solution for getting women to this levels or to promote education or support gender equality. Let's give awareness to men too, how they could support or promote gender equality, women empowerment, for making this world very secure. But specifically, at the last part of the question that you asked, what does your organization help to close this gap? I did recently when the Kabul falls failed on 2021. I designed a campaign, Stand for Girls' Education in Afghanistan. So for me, that campaign was really important because at the first moment when the Taliban took over, I was thinking like these people were going to shut down girls or women's activity, because I know even I was not growing up in the previous regime of the Taliban. I just heard from the story just taught me how these Talibans are like against women's freedom, equality, whatever. I just designed a campaign. Through that campaign, I tried to raise my voice because of those people that their voice is not going to be heard anymore. For those women that their voice is silent, Waving 1,000 Silent Voice was my first article that I published through Malala Fund. And I start with that article, and now I'm getting more deeper to this issue and trying to advocate globally for women's rights. I just wanna mention one important thing. I know Afghan women's being as a native Afghan are like facing too many things, even under prisoner, under pressure, and human rights, as I mentioned before, under attack. Even democracy is under question right now. But take a moment and do not forget about Nigeria, Iran, some part of Pakistan, some part of India, South Africa, Kenya, Syria, Iraq, Palestine. There's hundreds of other countries that women's voices needs to be heard. Because of these all issues globally with women, I was thinking with myself, I can't just stand and represent Afghan women in the world. Being as a female, this is my responsibility to represent all females' right in the world. And that's why recently, last year, with the Mahsa Amini killed, a young Iranian activist killed from Iran government, I felt so disappointed and my heart breaks in my soul, because I was thinking like, this is not only Afghan girls that they're suffering from this injustice and discrimination. So let's do something to get these all voices together. We are stronger, together is stronger. And that's why last year I launched another campaign. I just developed that campaign and just renamed the campaign under Join My Voice. What is your voice? Where is your voice from? And how you want to contribute your voice. So I start with my video using power of sport, being as an athlete, women rights activist to support gender equality, women empowerment, peace, and leadership. What do you want to contribute your voice for? And this is how about the solidarity networking. If we are like 5-6 people in this call today, we are all from different country, background, race, even religious. But what's bring us together here today in one point, just females issue, because we are all related to the females. Gender issue is the most important issue, and a women's issue is not the issue just women's need to take care of. Women needs to just react always and support that. It's related to whole human being life. And my messages here today, let's unite. Let's stand up each other. Let's support each other voices, because if we're not standing by each other, I'm sure that this International Women's Day was marked for me as the darkest International Women's Day even last year, because in my country, how should I celebrate International Women's Day? Even women are like facing discrimination, inequality, no access to education, whatever you could call, even you can imagine. But I represent Afghanistan in a very high-level event in Abu Dhabi to speak behalf of my nation, to speak behalf of the women, to ask those influential women's, high-level women's to support my voice, to hear Afghan women voices and take an action. I wish as an Afghan, I had a president like Zelensky, and I wish as an Afghan that I had a women leader to discuss women's rights, women's issue in a Doha discussion more than 8 years. I hope. And I'm sure by regretting, by hope, world not gonna change, but we're not gonna stop. As I never give up being as a 7 years old, fighting for my right, playing soccer and fighting for my education. Still, I'm standing by that statement and saying like, never give up. We will make this world beautiful one day by support of each other. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you, Kausar. Those are very powerful words. And like I completely agree with everything that's been said today. And I just wanted to maybe go back and also place like special emphasis on your call for joining voices and to be able to lift each other as we work towards the same goal. And I also think it's very important, and this goes back to something Stella said previously, like early in our webinar, regarding how sometimes when programs, governments, or any scenario starts taking in women into consideration or other marginalized groups, they do so in a tokenistic fashion, which actually ends up reproducing and furthering epistemic injustices. And like my invitation here now is to not only fight for being heard, but also for making change possible in a way that our voices are not only there, but also are given the value that we are owed. It is important that whenever everyone is in, and again, I am with you, Kausar, in that this is not only a fight like that women and marginalized groups have to fight, but also that people that are in positions of power need to advance and need to be mindful of and need to educate themselves to be able to fight for change and to see this change in the world. So now I wanted to ask the audience, I don't see any questions in the Q&A as of now.
Natalia, I just would like to have one thing.
Sure.
So I did want to give, I echo Kausar's comments and your own, and really give a shout out to all of the folks that have joined us this morning and really emphasize the important role that civil society activists like all of you play in opposing the forces of violence, repression, and greed that are around the world that we've heard so much about. You know, it was a confluence of a lot of different factors that created the catastrophe for human rights that is in Afghanistan now. There were grave missteps in foreign policy by Russia and the US and Pakistan and mafia factors, and it created an environment that allowed the Taliban, a misogynistic force of violence and repression, to thrive and grow, and to amplify tribal and sectarian divisions to their own advantage. That is an environment, that's a realm created by men with guns. Men who have somehow lost their hearts as well as their minds. And it makes me more convinced than ever that women in civil society, like all of you, are really the last best hope for the world. Just as Causer said, we are stronger together, and together we're stronger than all the forces that will pull us backward. And I would say that if these brave women in Afghanistan and Iran and Kenya and Iraq and all of the places that Causer mentioned can stand up for their rights in those environments, they can risk everything. Surely we can continue. And I wanted to say I'm really honored to be on this panel with these amazing women today and to share the struggle for equality and justice with all of them and with all of you who joined us. So gratitude to all of you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
We still have a few minutes for answering questions from the audience in case someone has one. So to give the audience time to type the questions in, perhaps, is there anything else any of you would like to add? Maybe thinking of additional ways of global networks and NGOs that they can help promote? Okay, Stella, go ahead.
Yeah. First, I wanted to highlight a point raised by one of the commentators that joined us. He said there is need for international monitoring to be established by the UN to enforce whatever they are putting in place for us. Monitoring. Then on my own side, it is important to know that in my own place, we don't have any digital. I made 3 points. There is no law that protects digital discrimination against women. And by implication, none exists to engender women's digital inclusion. And also, the digital space, I believe we can use it for mass mobilization, create groups which can easily be accessed across the world within a country, which can facilitate educative, enlightened, and empowerment for women. We need to create that digital groups all over the world for gender push, not just focusing in one area and coming to UN for meetings that do not actually enforce anything within those less developed countries. That's how I call it. Like Nancy said, when I heard Nancy narrating the constitutional removal of one of the laws in US, I got worried because most of us look up to this Western world. So when things like that happen, it rebounds it back to our own area. So I wish to thank IANGEL for including me in this wonderful panel. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Natalia.
No, thank you, Estela. Maurice, Causer, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just as a last sentence and comments, the very most important thing that I recently realized here being a youth resident even, and even being in my own country, it's my very long time dasters in my heart and in my mind that I was trying to carry on. Still, we're living in 2023 with most energy, power, technology, whatever you call, but still we have a huge bridge of barrier between women of power and women of need. So what gave us power to reach out to those high-level women with our specific message? I'm giving you a very simple example. It has been more than 2 years ago that I'm trying to pass the message of Afghan women to the Vice President of America, Mrs. Kamala Harris, the most respectfully women, that she promised us in the first beginning of Taliban regime that Afghan women are like in our top priority. I rely on her words, and I proud myself being as a woman. I proud of herself being as a Vice President of United States of America, to promise Afghan nation, specifically women, that they are standing behind us. It would motivate me and inspire me to move forward and to support my country. But why this is really hard, taking my whole year to reach out to Vice President of country with my specific message. It doesn't mean that I don't have anything specific, anything special, anything in urgency, sensitive to share, but it means a lot by telling our story, by supporting youth leadership, by developing those high-level networking could really improve gender equality and the quality of education even, and relationship and peace building in a country. This is really important, I guess. So as I see, this is the whole experience. I'm sure it's not my experience personal. It's not only my personal experience. It should be experienced with any of you women's in this call today. Let's break this barrier by uplifting our voices, by telling our stories to the different platform, using the social media power and also our connections to make effect or impact in this area. And this is the area that I want to really deep and dive and really gonna get focused and part of and my work and my advocacy work to break these all barriers, to equal right for all women, equal right for all humans. I know we really still need support. Still, we need support to push gender equality, women empowerment through that. Even we have not been, as Stella mentioned, SDG is just focusing on 17 Sustainable Development Goal. But to be honest, to be sure, these 17 Sustainable Development Goals is not possible with a women's engagement, because women are like the every community base. Their voice needs to be heard, their leadership needs to be respected, and their identity needs to be visible. So thank you so much, Natalie.
I also wanted to remind people, we would love you all to be part of our network. Some of you already are, but many of you are not. So if you'd like to stay in touch with us and be part of our network, please sign up for our mailing list. It's free. It just means you're going to get a few emails a year. Be informed of our actions. There will be opportunities to volunteer and to connect on issues. So Joelle can put that into the chat. You can always visit our website at www.iangel.org to see what the latest work that we're doing is. And we hope that you'll join us for our gala 10th anniversary celebration later this year. And don't forget to submit those nomination packets for an inspiring feminist leader for our Mel Zanoun Zawani Rights and Leadership Award later this year.
Thank you, Nancy. Do we have any questions from the audience at this point?
There was one question that was sort of touched upon with some of Kauser's and Nancy's comments. Neely asked the question earlier, how can we, emphasizing the how, can we raise our voices to bring about change? And I think this is a more general question for any of the panelists who want to answer.
Well, sign up for our mailing list. That's top of mind. I mean, the connecting together is how we raise our voices. When we are alone, it's hard to feel empowered. This activity of connecting together through the CSW forum or outside the CSW forum, connecting with each other and sharing our experiences is empowering. I want to emphasize that each of you and all of you have a lot more power than you think you have. And the key there is really believing you have power and asserting it. And you will find that if you assert power, you will have it. that by taking action and getting in the game, people see what you do, they hear your voice, and then they join. And it's a reinforcing force. It grows and it multiplies. So do not be shy. Connect with others and connect with networks and assert power, and you will find that power will come. And Lord knows we need all the power we can get in these difficult, challenging times.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been like a truly inspiring discussion. I echo some of the audience's comments on how informative, inspiring, engaging, fascinating discussion we've had today, and this is all thanks to you, our panelists. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your experience. Thank you for being open and for just being a true change maker and human rights activist.
I think we are, am I right? We're recording this event, so we will be posting it, I guess, on our YouTube channel or making it available. So another reason to join our network. Thank you all so much. And I guess we'll call it a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Happy International
everybody.
Women's Month.
Right. And year and decade.
Exactly.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.